Okay, so since you guys are trying to go to Keiger tomorrow, I think that seeing if we can figure out kind of a quick, as hands-off possible way. What I'm seeing in the videos is something called a poisoned cue. So when the dog, like let's say I wanted Rise here to do something that he doesn't like. Let's say, he doesn't like cleaning his ears. So let's say I take out a piece of cheese, which I know is really yummy, and I'm gonna try and get him over to the ear cleaning station where I have my ear cleaning stuff. And so I give him a piece of cheese, and I take out my ear wash, and he eats the cheese at first, but the next time I bring out the piece of cheese, he remembers that I cleaned his ears right after. I think that's what's happening with Keiger with your treat. He sees the treat and he sees the leash and he goes, oh, okay, here comes this thing that I'm scared of. And so it's called a poison cue. So you take out your treat and he goes, oh, and you can see him like lose his appetite, which is a side effect of cortisol and adrenaline also. When they release these stress hormones, one of the side effects, and you guys might have experienced this before too, is when you get really nervous or really amped up, you aren't hungry. So that can happen to dogs, and it gives us a little inner gauge to how stressed they are sometimes. Some dogs will eat through it. So that's why we're going with a higher value food. Meat or cheese is usually good. Now, I think I recall that there was a guarding incident with food, and so you'll have to let me know if that was the case. Some dogs will guard food if it's in their possession. So let's say I was using some sort of slow feeder and I was putting like peanut butter or cream cheese in and setting it down and then moving over to try and leash him. A lot of dogs, once they have the food item in their possession, then they'll guard the food item. But if I'm handing him the cheese and he's motivated for it, he's not too stressed to take it, then he's less likely to guard it because he doesn't have possession of it. If I were to put the chunk of cheese on the ground and then reach for him, he's more likely to guard. So that possession matters for some dogs, not all dogs. So the first thing I would look for is getting him out into the open. And what I would do to start, I'm going to tip this down a little bit. And forgive me, I'm kind of just like makeshift doing a quick video here. So we're not in our professional studio today. Okay, so the first thing I would do is I would get something high value, meat or cheese, something you haven't used for this before, and I would just drop it in the middle of the floor and walk away. And the reason I would do that is because right now you're coming in with your food and your leash and you're trying to call him towards you. And he knows in the context of mom or dad, leash, treat, he's getting leashed up. So the first thing we want to do is just like rewire that association. We also want him in the middle of the floor so that he's less likely to feel cornered. If a dog is feeling like they can't retreat, they're more likely to fight. So you take that flight away, and the chance that they're going to fight when they feel threatened, it goes way up. Okay, so I'm just going to do a few of these here with my dog Rise, and what that looks like. Now he doesn't already have a negative association with this, so he's pretty easy. I'm just going to drop the cheese right there. Good. Now I'm going to drop the cheese right there. Now, if Keiger is not doing guarding, using a slow feeder can be helpful because you can drop a few treats. And when I use a slow feeder, I will, and I don't know if you guys have used these before, but it's just something that they have to eat around. I have a couple of different examples and I'll show you. So if it hasn't been guarding, if the incidents where he bit where there was food involved was just in your hand and had to do with you closing the proximity, then perhaps a slow feeder would be good. Now, for this, I'm going to take my lower value. There's still pretty high value in the house, and he's not very stressed. So I'm just going to put a little handful here, and while he's eating, I'm going to come over with my higher value, and I'm just going to throw him a little piece of cheese. I'm going to be really conscious of not reaching down towards him too much, and I'm going to try and just throw it. And that way, he's starting to learn, like, when he's eating something and I approach, something better happens. So I'm going to demonstrate that again. And this also can help a dog who guards. I'm going to put a couple of medium value and then let him start eating that. When I approach, I'm not going to close the gap too much, because part of what's triggering the biting is the reaching out. So I'm demonstrating that. Don't do that though. Rise doesn't guard. But what I'm going to do is just toss it from afar, and even dropping it. And even if he starts to seem suspicious, stop where you see him start to feel, look stressed. Like, let's say I'm walking towards and I see that he either stops eating or looks at me or freezes, then I'm going to stop, even if it's like 7 feet away, and I'm just going to underhand try and make a basket. You won't always make it, but like, what we're trying to do is rewire a conditioned emotional response that Keiger has. Right now, he knows that when these things are present, that you are going to be putting social pressure on him, and he gets scared. And so, this may or may not work for tomorrow. And I'll kind of leave you a message about that, about other options. So the quick and dirty way of trying to get a loop leash. Now, I know you guys don't have a loop leash, but you can use a regular leash. Some of them work better than others for this. You can also put like a light carabiner on the clip of a leash, and that can work. But for this one, it's just a regular leash, but I'm just gonna feed. Oh, I'll put this away so that we don't have such a nosy helper here. But get down here. So it's just a regular leash, but I'm going to feed this through and then just create this little loop. And I'm gonna want this, kind of, excuse me, watch out for those smart dogs who find trickier ways to get your treats faster, with less work. So now I have kind of this little loop leash that I've created. There's still this clip on the end, but it moves pretty easy, and I like this one. It's big, so I can kind of create a bigger, stiffer hole where I can keep my arm further away, because a lot of what is triggering this is the lean down, I suspect. And we'll take a look at it closer. But the next thing I want to do is, rather than put my social pressure, and that means social pressure is when you're facing the dog, you're squared up, you're leaning over, you're reaching out, you're talking to, you're looking at. All of this is attending to the dog, which we as people, when we're pro-social, we look at each other straight on. We square up, we look each other in the eye, we shake hands, we lean in, and that's all pro-social behavior. And we have a social contract about that. It's in this culture, that's considered pro-social and friendly. Now, if we were two dogs and we squared up on each other, and especially, dogs who are really well versed with other dogs, and we squared up and we were facing each other, and we leaned over the top of another dog. You see how my dog, he's a puppy, he's just a year old, but he moves back. He knows I'm not threatening him, but he still is like, hey, that's kind of uncomfortable. Because if we were two dogs, that would be really aggressive. He knows that, like, people, he's been socialized pretty well with people, and people will do these things, and it's not necessarily aggressive as if we were another dog. But dogs who are fearful or have not been very well socialized, and sometimes you can socialize a ton with dogs and there's just a genetic aspect. Sometimes there's been some sort of incident in a critical developmental stage, so that can be like Usually that is between birth and 4 months, but they also go through a really sensitive teenage phase where they go through a second fear period, which a lot of aggression starts when there was something that happened that was scary for them in that time. They're especially sensitive. So like if there was, sometimes it's just using punitive measures, collar corrections. It can create what they call hand aggression because when you're using a collar like a prong collar or a pop collar, something that gives a physical correction, it creates pain, but also when people do that, they move their hand and it's right close to that. And so a really common thing that happens is the dog starts to associate hand movement around here with pain. And so they get defensive and fearful, and so they start to target the hands. So that could be something that's happening. Sometimes the dog is just super socially sensitive and we don't always notice how nervous they are until they become blustery. So a lot of low-level nervous behavior is like avoiding eye contact, freezing, trying to walk away. We see that with Keiger. Okay, sorry, let's get to it. At any rate, so understanding that when you are squared up, reaching out, talking to, it's scarier for dogs. When they're already nervous, they go back to that instinct, and that instinct is, if a dog was doing this, this would be aggressive. And so we want to make sure that when we're doing this, we're doing it out in the open, in the middle of the room. We want as big of a loop as possible, and the first thing I'm going to do is, come here, helper, is I'm going to put my hand through the loop with the treat, and then I'm going to have it out in front of me so that he's coming sideways. Yes. And then I'll let him eat it, and then I'll take it off. I might even amend that, especially because Keiger has real hand movement sensitivities. So I might even instead hold it up, and you want to put your hand through, draw him through, and then pull it back before that last treat is done. And that way he's still kind of eating. So let me try this again and show you at a better angle. And when I bring treats through this, the first thing I do is I take a little handful, so I could feed him a few. Then I put it through my loop, okay? And then he's very interested in this. And I also don't want to push it towards him, so you can see I'm kind of moving it away. I kind of think like using a lure is almost like if you had a ribbon on top of water and you're trying to get the whole thing to kind of move around. So that way you're not pushing into him, because as soon as you push into him, a dog could get scared, but also you're kind of like pushing him back. And what we want to do is first we draw our hand through, then we let the dog get interested, but I'm going to try and kind of go by him to get him interested. And then I'll bring him through, and before he's done, I take it off, and I still have a couple of treats in my hand. And that way he is I'm leaving him kind of like wanting that last treat and stopping on a good note instead of eating that last treat and then pulling his head back. And for some reason that really matters. Okay, so now I'm gonna try it again. I'll try and get a better angle here. As my hand's all the way through, I'm going to draw him through, let him eat a few. Before he eats that last one, I'm pulling them both off, and I still have a couple of treats in my hand. And I will do that like 2 or 3 times, never letting this rest on him, always out in the open, trying not to lean over him, making sure, a lot of times I'm actually kind of perched here to show you guys, but I think that dogs tend to do better when you are in a real committed seated position instead of like concentrating and perched over them, because then your muscles are a little tenser. Thank you. Your muscles are tenser, and that can make them feel like you're about to pounce on them. Your breathing is more shallow, especially because you're concentrating and trying to remember. There's no, you don't have to do this right the first time. Our big thing that we're trying to do is just rewire a positive association with something. If he's really scared of the leash, I might just put it in a circle, put it on the ground, and I might just use this as kind of my target to start. And just getting him a positive association, like, hey, sometimes treats appear in the magic circle. This is the magic circle of fun and treats. And we're not putting a lot of social pressure on him to start. We're just, you know, doing a few, and it's better for dogs. You see, like, I wanted him to rest for a little bit because I wanted to give him a chance to work the cortisol and the adrenaline out of his system. Because it takes a while. They can release cortisol and adrenaline very fast, but some dogs have a slower recovery, and they can only rid the body of that and kind of recalibrate with their stress levels so fast. And so often we do what's trigger stacking. They have, you know, something that's a little nervous, you know, some sort of, you know, we do the leash, or they see us getting our shoes on and they're getting excited, so now they're amping up, and maybe it's a positive excitement. But, you know, if you've had kids, or if you've ever taken him to a certain park that he likes, you know, he's looking for those signs and he gets amped. And then he's already, you know, he gets up to a 6 or a 7, and then something scary happens, and then you have a bigger reaction for less. And so it's all just, you know, good stress is still stress. So you want to, you know, do short little exposures to this with really low pressure, and then like a rest. Like I might do 3 of these and then take a 10-minute rest. And then meanwhile the dog's doing a little dance like, hey, can we do this magic circle thing? It's been really good to me. And then I'm also going to like take the pressure off where I'm not doing a ton of like looking and talking to him. I might be I might even be like turning my head. I want to keep my body sideways to just help the dog feel like less of a conflict. And I think that would probably help a little. Now, as they're getting better, then I might do, and I like this stiff leash. If you can find one like this, great, because you can do something where, let me get the right way. Come here, Papa. We bring him through, and now I'm going, as he's eating, I'm just gonna let it touch him a little bit, but I'm still gonna take it back, and I still have a treat in my pocket, or in my hand. We're gonna do that again. Papa. So remember, I put my treat hand through, and then I draw his head through instead of putting this over. You see how he backs up? So we want to draw him through. He's eating the whole time, one after the other, so you want to have a good little handful so that you can still pull it back and have a treat left in your hand. Okay, and as he's getting, and again, slower is faster with this, and higher value treats, as long as you're not having guarding issues. And they have slip leads at the store sometimes. I have one here. I think I sent you a picture of it. And what it looks like is this. You want to test it because some of them have little stoppers. Like you can see this has a little stopper, and some of them are more malleable than others. So I can make a big old loop here and then just pull it. And what I would do with him, with Keiger, is, you know, I would do a couple where it touches, and I'm looking for, we don't want him tolerating. We want him completely comfortable. So if you're seeing a lot of like worry, it's better to spread this out, do a few in the morning, you know. But when you get to the point that it's kind of leaning, you can let it lean a little bit and then just move back, and now you've got him. And so that's the beauty of a slip leash. Now, if you let this loose when you're outside, it could get off if you let it loose enough. Unless, you know, because to really secure it, you're going to take this thing down, and I don't think that you should do that with Keiger if you get a leash like this at first, because I think that social pressure of moving into him could trigger something. So I'd rather you just be aware of how loose this is, and just, you know, don't let the gap get too big. And that way, and I would get a longer one than this one too if you are buying one. And they make, this is a 4 foot, but they make them usually in 4 or 6 feet. And then when you get back into the house, you can kind of let it loose so it gets bigger. You can let them drag it around, you know, and just let it fall off naturally. You can, you know, you can always, now he doesn't have an issue with this, but what I would do if I wanted to get it off is I'd bring it by something and then I'd pull it off. So it's almost like, I'll do that again because I didn't articulate that well. So I put my hand here and then I draw him under. So he's drawing under my hand and then I just pick it up and then I pull it off at the same time, just like we did at the beginning, leaving some treats. And then you can toss the treats on the ground and just walk away and try and take the pressure off at the end to leave it happy. You don't want him really, you know, nervous about it or sketched out about it if you can help it, because if you go too far too fast, now you're poisoning these cues, and so slower is faster. So this may or may not be an option for tomorrow. So my other question would be, what happens if we can't get a leash on him? Will he get into the car? Do you have a crate? We can talk about plan Bs, but I'm going to send this over because it's getting kind of long and I'm trying to pack a lot in there just because there's a lot of contingencies here. But feel free, I'll have my phone around me. If you have questions, you can either type them out or we can catch a quick phone call.